think once the presentation starts, yep, there you go.
Sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. Let me make sure this is all good. Let me go ahead and grab my settings again, make sure this layout's all good. Can I get some thumbs up from anybody that's got the video on? Can you all see this? This is working great. Thank you, May. Thank you, Keem, Jason, much appreciated. All right, here to talk about Liftoff tonight. My name is John Woolbright, so let's get going. After you guys are all finished with your learning, which is about to wrap up, so LC 101 is about to finish, what happens next? So first and foremost, you need to make sure all of your assignments are finished prior to moving into Liftoff. That's one of the big ones. Secondly, graduate. More information on that further down in the presentation. Build a project. That's going to be what is involved in Liftoff. That's the main goal, is to build a project with the skills that you've learned in LC 101. Lastly, start the job search. We're there to advocate on your behalf, of course, but there's a lot of things that you can do on your own that really go a long way in order to land your first job in tech. And we go over all that in Liftoff. So it's all part of that program. Assignments, just a couple of reminders. You pass this class if you have a passing grade. I should say you pass this course, not class. You pass LC 101 if you have a passing grade for every graded / required assignment. So that's all of your graded assignments, I believe 1 through 4 for Unit 2. If you have any questions about that, feel free to shoot me a direct message. Be happy to talk about it. But there is a cutoff date for the completion of those assignments. As you can see here, it's listed as November 18th. So that is not this Thursday, but that is the following Thursday. So when you come to class that night, if you're wrapping up a couple of assignments, that's perfect. We're going to be here to help you out. But the goal is to have everything finished and completed by the end of that night, so that, number one, you can get a break prior to Liftoff, and some of the TAs that are going to be moving into Liftoff can also get a break and take a breather and prepare for that course. And you can, get ready for graduation and just, celebrate this journey that you've been on so far. But looking forward, finish your remaining assignments and begin thinking about what you want to build as a project. Keep in mind that these are going to be group projects. So if you have a project that you really want to work on yourself, that's great. A lot of people like to jump on board with that. So still think about what you want to build with the skills that you've learned. Graduation info, in case you don't already have it. The date is November 29th. That is a Monday, November 29th, 2021. I believe it's at 5:30. If it's not, it's at 6. So that is the graduation date, is November 29th. Please keep that in mind. All of you are able to attend, even if you don't finish all of your assignments or you are not considered a graduate of the program. You're all more than welcome to attend. Invite your friends, invite your family. Come and celebrate with your fellow students and learners. Also, by the way, I noticed there's not a chat in the Zoom, so if you have any questions, there's probably a lecture questions channel. Feel free to shoot some messages in there, or just send them to me directly. Or you can also just unmute yourself and ask out loud. I'm totally fine with that too. Feel free to ask at any time. Your capstone project. So like I said, this is going to be the main thing that you're going to be building in Liftoff. And why do you do it? So first and foremost, it's to prove that you can build something with what you've learned. So taking those skills and applying them to something that is able to demonstrate those abilities to not only launch code so that we can advocate better on your behalf, but also our company partners that want to see what you're capable of. As it says here in these next couple of points, it's a chance for you to be creative, really have some fun with it, and also apply things that you haven't learned in LC 101 to your project, should you wish to do so. Not an absolute requirement, but it's sometimes fun to bring in like an API from maybe like a Google Books API or the Maps API from Google, or any other kind of API that you want to work with, or you could bring in a different technology. You could really get into Spring Security, so on and so forth down the line. You do a front end React application, whatever suits your fancy. But like it says here, employers really want to know that you're passionate about what you're creating. That's probably the number one thing. They want to know that you actually truly enjoy creating projects, building applications, and learning new things. That's I guarantee that's the number one thing that company partners are looking for in candidates, more so than well, they want to know what you're actually capable of, but they want to know that you're, you know, in it for the long haul, that they're not, you know, they're hiring somebody that's passionate about the industry. So what part of the vetting that companies do is they look into your GitHub. They look at what you built. They want to see this project that demonstrates those abilities, preferably an app with 3 to 5 features. In our Liftoff curriculum, you'll be able to find out more information on what is considered a feature and what is not. But it's not. I don't want the 3 to 5 features to sound intimidating, but you know, it can be a number of things. You could have a search feature in your application incorporating Spring Security with, you know, authentication. That's a feature, user authentication. Being able to, you know, create a new list, like say a to-do list, something along those lines. So you had a chat feature, or you know, a feature that emailed a user once they made a change on their user account within your application. That could be another feature as well. So it's a number of things, but we want to see 3 to 5 solid functional features within your project. Traditionally, this goes back to before LC 101, kind of around, and I'm really getting into the history of launch code, but when launch code used to operate on a CS50 model, so Harvard CS50, students and learners would apply for the class, they would go through the CS50 curriculum, and then after, they would build a project on their own and then apply for the apprenticeship program, which is, you know, something that launch code has always offered. But they didn't have any help building that project from launch code. They were just said, we want you to build a project with the skills that you've created, go and do it. So there was no support. So that's where the Liftoff curriculum kind of, I guess, came from. We decided that people needed help with their job readiness skills and project building. There's more info on this. Let me go ahead and copy this. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and drop it in the general for everybody. If you check out the general channel, I just dropped in that link that I copied from the slides. Feel free to take a look at that for some more info. How? So building a project on your own without Liftoff, that is something that you can still do. So that is still an option. As I said at the very start of this, Liftoff is optional. You do not have to take it. You do not have to go through the course. But if you don't, and you still want to utilize launch code in our apprenticeship program, you'll still have to build your own project and demonstrate that to someone like myself or another launch code staff member in a one-on-one scenario. So that is an option should you wish to do it, or say you've already built a project and you think that you're already ready for the apprenticeship program. You can you're more than capable of applying on your own and demoing those skills. But as it says here, building a project through Liftoff has been, I guess, a very good resource for students and learners, because we found that it's very difficult to build one on your own. I think there's a couple of reasons for that. So first and foremost, not having the guidelines and the guidance and like the motivation of coming to class and working with your friends that you've made, other learners. Time management is a big issue for people that are working on their own. So we've really tried to make this curriculum help you build that project so that you're not on your own on this one. However, should you wish to do so, that is still an option. So what is Liftoff? Down to the meat and potatoes of it. So it is an 8-week course. I'm going to mention again, it is optional, and I'm going to send out a survey here for you all to opt into towards the end of this. It is an 8-week course. It starts on December 2nd. There's more information on that later. But the idea is to help you build your personal projects, come up with those ideas, and really understand the software development lifecycle. So that's a whole kind of that's a concept that you've kind of been learning throughout LC 101, but we really try and hammer home in Liftoff, so that you're really familiar with that lifecycle as you enter into the tech field. But it's also an opportunity to learn some new skills should you wish to incorporate something that you've read about since you started programming. So like I said, if you wanted to build a React application, that's something that you could do. And it's also a really good place to practice interviewing. So this third bullet here, interviewing, resume building, and additional job readiness skills. So 3 big ones. So interviewing, that comes in the form of mock behavioral interviews and mock technical interviews. So the behavioral interviews are going to be behavioral questions. So tell me about a time that you had a difficult conversation with a coworker. It's also about a time you didn't get along with a coworker. What did you do to resolve that problem? What do you love about the tech field? Those kind of questions. The mock technical interview can either come in the form of live coding, where it would kind of emulate a whiteboarding exercise where you don't have an editor, you don't have like those autofill statements that IntelliJ is really nice about. Same with Visual Studio Code, and it can also come in the form of concept questions. So, can you please explain to me what object-oriented programming is? Can you tell me what a for loop is, or a nested for loop? Those kinds of questions might come along those technical interviews as well. Resume building. So we also help you build a resume. We have our own launch code templated resume that we provide to you. So it gives you a lot of suggestions and ideas as far as what to include. We include a lot of things already, so you can kind of plug and play and just move things around. But it's a really good way to build your first resume, should you not already have one. But it also comes with a whole document that gives you some insight as far as what you include on here. I'm trying to check. Make sure there's no questions. How often is this course offered during the year? Good question. So there's a question in general, how often is Liftoff offered during the year? So it's offered every time that we complete an LC 101 course. So I believe right now we average 3 to 4 LC 101s a year. So you can imagine that there's going to be 3 to 4 Liftoffs per year. And that's going to be about quarterly. So about, that's about the average, 3 to 4 Liftoffs per year. Lastly, it's a continued community to support you, helping you build your personal portfolio, or your whatever it is that you're going to use to say, hey, I'm ready to jump into the tech career field. I'm ready to program. This is what I can do. This is what I'm capable of. Let me go check this other question. Do we have to do a group project? I thought we could also do a solo project. Good question, Gracie. As of right now, everyone's going to be enrolled into a group project. If you are someone that is really against that for whatever reason, you can send me a message directly. But right now, everybody's going to be participating in a group project. If anybody has any questions about that in particular, feel free to shout it out. We can talk about that towards the end of the presentation too.
If it's a personal project, then how do we also how do we make ideas for personal projects? Is that different than the group project?
So I guess wherever I had the term personal in this presentation, if that's what you're referring to, the group project is the same idea. So if you have an idea for a project,
okay,
that can be applied to a group project as well.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Sorry for any of that confusion, Jennifer. I should have taken out that personal.
Oh no, it's totally fine. I was just trying to figure out if there was one project or two.
No, just one project, just one.
Cool.
So,
cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. So when is Liftoff? More specifically, so it's going to be on Thursdays from 5:30 to 8:30 Central Standard Time, similar to what you're doing now in LC 101. The start date is December 2nd. A couple of important things to note. We will not have class on December 16th, nor will we have class on December 23rd. So please keep that in mind moving forward. Class will resume on January 6th. And let me double check, because those dates look a little funny to me. December 23rd. Nope, that looks... Sorry, I take that back, everyone. This should say December 9th and December, sorry, not December 9th. This should say December 23rd and December 30th. So just to clarify that, we will have class on December 16th, but we will not have class on December 23rd and December 30th. Launch code is closed for operations between Christmas and New Year's, so there will not be anybody available within Launch Code's organization. So you also get that time off. And like I said, we'll resume class after the new year on December 6th. The last day of Liftoff will be on February 3rd. Any questions about the timeline here? Cool. Next up, land a job. So to join the Launch Codes Apprenticeship Program, you either A, have to complete a project and apply through the Launch Code web application. Like I mentioned earlier, I'll go ahead and grab this link and throw it in the chat. Oops. It's my Slack. So if you want to apply for the apprenticeship program, you can always do so there. I just put that in the general chat. This is not liking. There we go. You will have to fill out an application. It's not too extensive, but there are a couple things that you have to do. You will have to take a HackerRank assessment. So that's going to be basically a live coding challenge or a live coding simulation, but you're going to be able to use the resources that you have, at your own disposal while you take that test. It is an hour. I believe you have an hour to complete it, but it's just going to be a coding challenge where you can use whatever resources you have available. That includes Google. However, that is something that you have to complete in order to apply through the web application.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I am supposed to get untimed stuff as an accommodation because I have bad experiences with the timing from anxiety.
Okay. That's probably something that we can, I don't know, to be quite honest, like where I would enable that or disable that, Amy, but I'm sure that that's something that we could look into should you wish to apply through the web application. You would just need to reach out directly to somebody prior to applying, okay? Makes sense, Amy? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. And you will also be interviewing, should you apply through the website, you will be interviewing with a Launch Code staff member. So like someone like myself or one of my teammates, where we will be asking you behavioral questions similar to what you would be going through in Liftoff. We would be going over your project that you created, and then we would also be doing an additional live coding exercise away from the HackerRank exercise. So it's not an easy thing to do, that's for sure. Or you complete the Liftoff program and you fill out the Liftoff to Job Ready survey at the end of that course, and you're automatically accepted into the apprenticeship program. So those are the two options that you currently have available. I personally would go with option 2. I think it's the most beneficial. You learn a lot throughout Liftoff, and it's a lot more fun that way, working with others towards that goal. Overview of the apprenticeship progress. So when you are marked as job ready and join the apprenticeship candidate pool, that is when our company team will start working with our company partners to match you with a job. So that's the goal. So they get requests from our company partners that say like, hey, we're looking for somebody that matches, X skill set with, Y background. And we're like, okay, well, we've got Jason over here. We think he'd be a good fit for the role. We would send Jason over to meet with them and interview for that role. When you are connected, like I just mentioned, that's when you would interview with that company. If you do land the interview and complete that interview and obviously excel, that's going to be where you would land an apprenticeship. As it says here in point 5, 4 out of 5 apprentices convert into full-time salaried positions. So I want to do a little bit of clarification on that point. So this isn't saying that 4 out of 5 individuals within the apprenticeship program land a job. This is saying that once you land an apprenticeship, 4 out of 5 of those individuals land a full-time salaried position with that company. Does that make sense to everyone? If not, I would love to answer any questions about it, because that can be a little bit confusing. I like to be very, very transparent and clear with everybody. Cool. That sounds great. If you have any questions you want to ask more directly, feel free to shoot me a message in Slack. I am available there. see. So during the apprenticeship searching process. So while we're searching for an apprenticeship that matches your skill set that we think you would be a good fit for, these are some of the things that you can continue to do to make yourself more marketable, more available as a candidate, more, noteworthy, whatever you want to call it. These are some things that you can do. So continue building projects, continue learning new skills, applying them to existing projects or creating new ones. If you're practicing, you're going to keep learning and you're going to excel. So that's the main thing. Don't stop coding. Don't stop building things after LC 101, after Liftoff. Keep coding, keep building things. That's going to be your best bet. I think that's probably my favorite piece of advice. Don't stop building new things, because once you fall out of practice, that's when you get into trouble. Practice your interview skills as much as you can. I think the best way to do this is, because it's hard to land interviews, if I'm being quite honest. Like, it's not easy to just go practice your interviews on an actual interview. Have mock interviews with a fellow student. That might be helpful, but network as much as you can. Go to any kind of coding events or programming meetup groups. Ask them for advice. They would give you some good advice, I'm sure. But really utilize Liftoff. We do a couple of mock interviews during that time, and you can most likely get multiple attempts at the same event. So that's going to be a really good place to get feedback directly from the company partner, and just get that good face-to-face exposure time and get those nerves out of the way, just so you've at least done it once and get familiar with that whole atmosphere. In case you're not someone that's been on a lot of interviews in your lifetime. As it says here, a couple of things.
I've never had a job interview.
Yeah, so that's definitely going to be good for you, Amy, to get that practice in Liftoff.
And will they be understanding when it comes to eye contact when someone's on the spectrum?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's something that we've had regular chats with our company partners about. I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. As it says here, many interviews fail due to poor representation during the interview or resume process. So poor representation, that's a very, very general and broad term, just to come with a clear, defined reason for why you were applying or why you were interested in that role. I think one of the big things to get down is your own elevator pitch. So a 30 to 45 second pitch on tell me a little bit about yourself. That can go a long way. That's kind of short. I don't know, Kyle, you may have other thoughts about that, but feel free to jump in there if you want. But if you go longer than 2 minutes, a minute and a half, you're probably rambling like I am now. So you don't want to do that. That's definitely something that you don't want to do. Lastly on this slide, stay positive. It's not easy to jump into this field. And you all have not been doing this for very long. So keep that in mind. You've learned a lot in the past 4 or 5 months, and you've still got a lot to learn. But don't be worried if you're not landing a job directly after LC 101. It takes people time. It can take up to a year from start to finish, from start of LC 101 to land that apprenticeship. But I will say that there's a lot of success and happy turnarounds. So there's somebody that I've worked with in Kansas City for a while, a learner that just landed a job, but went on interview after interview and was starting to get discouraged. And it was really, really tough. And that can happen. That can be you, but you just have to keep going. You have to keep trying. If you want it enough, if you keep working at it, you will get noticed, you will get interviews, and you will ultimately land the job if you set your mind to it. Sometimes the stars align for people and they get a job very soon. That's just a very, very, I guess, unrealistic expectation, but some people do get lucky because luck is involved a little bit. But as it says, yeah.
You had touched upon this just a little bit earlier, but how exactly do we stand out compared to people who have 4 years of learning about computer science and coding versus us who just have 4 to 5 months as of now?
Good question. And who was that was talking? I didn't see anybody light up.
Zoo.
Zoo. So how do you stand out? Is that the question? Or how do you compete?
How do we compete to stand out?
How do you compete to stand out? So are you saying what can you do to stand out?
Yeah, because obviously they have like the information. They have a lot more information compared to us, as we've been doing it for a lot longer.
So a couple of things. So a lot of computer science grads, like they do have, I guess, like fundamentally, they're very, very solid when it comes to computer science skills. Sometimes what they haven't done though is built an actual web application. So like they don't have a lot of experience with frameworks. Sometimes some of them do, but what you can do to stand out is really just be yourself, I think, is the number one piece of advice that we give, because a lot of computer science grads are going through that typical 4-year education degree, and a lot of our company partners are looking for, to diversify their own workforce. So like they want people from more than just that 4-year degree background, regardless of what demographic you are, right? So they want to bring in people that have experience from whatever walk of life that might be. So say you've spent the last 10 or 12 years, working in hotel management, for instance. That's just something that I've done in my past. There's something that I learned there that I can apply to programming and coding, and that's most likely going to be the communication skills and how you interact with people and work with others. So like that's going to be your number one advantage, is how you work with other people and what benefit you can bring based on your own background that you can apply to your own, that you can apply to your new team. But I'd say the number one thing is just be yourself and communicate effectively, and be honest with them about what you are capable of doing and not capable of doing. But the willingness to like learn and grow is more often than not much higher with launch coders than like a typical 4-year computer science graduate. Did that help out at all?
It helps somewhat. Thank you.
Gotcha. And we'll go over some more of that stuff in Liftoff too, as far as like what you can do to stand out. And I'm not saying that it's easy. That's for sure. It's what you can do is just try apply yourself more than them. A lot of computer science graduates, they rely on that degree on their resume to get their foot in the door, and oftentimes it does work. So I would say the drive, like your own drive, is going to outweigh the computer science graduate more often than not. How to join Liftoff. So complete this opt-in survey that I'm going to send to you all right now. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and put this in the general channel, everyone. I'll also most likely put this in the announcements channel, and I'll put an announcement up on Canvas while I'm at it. But that survey needs to be completed by November 22nd in order to be enrolled into Liftoff. So that gives you, I'm not sure, like a week, maybe 2 weeks to complete that. It most likely take you 5 minutes, but that needs to be done by November 22nd. If you have opted in through that survey and you've completed all of your LC 101 assignments, you will be enrolled into Liftoff. So that transition period, I will be adding everyone into the Liftoff class the week of the 22nd through the 24th. So that's Thanksgiving week. We're going to be out the 25th and 26th, of course, but I'll be adding you into that Liftoff program. So you'll be able to see the Canvas curriculum between the 22nd and 24th. That's my goal, to have you all added. Any questions about that?
I have a question about the group projects in general in Liftoff.
Yeah.
So, we've met a lot of people in this course, a lot of wonderful, wonderful people. And, if we've been discussing projects, because we knew that this was where this course was headed, if we've been discussing projects with certain individuals, is there a way that we can maybe build on those ideas that we have been having throughout this course, or are we going to be assigned totally randomly?
So I guess your question is, is there any kind of way that you'd be able to get paired with that particular, anybody that you've been discussing group projects, or is it going to be random?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Usually it's completely random. That being said, if I'm not unopen to potentially allowing some of you to work with an individual that you have project ideas with. You just have to send me that message directly if that's something that you're interested in doing. But a lot of the times, I'm not saying that this is the case with your particular scenario, so I hope you don't take this the wrong way. But we've tried in the past to have an option to where you could include a student that you would want to work with on a group project. And sometimes the student that wants to work with some other student, that feeling is not mutual. So it can be very tricky. Now, like I said, it's not, I'm sure that's not the situation that you're currently in, but that's made it tricky in the past, and that's why we've moved away from that. All that being said, I'm not unopen to working with you potentially on that.
How many people are in each group?
Usually between 4 to 5, 5 on the high end. Any other questions about opting in or the survey or groups, anything like that?
Well, I had a question about the apprenticeships. It said 4 out of 5 get offered full term. What types of things? I'm sorry. What kind of things keeps the 1 out of 5 from getting offered full time positions?
Yeah, good question. So 4 to 5, that's 80%. It's a number of things. Sometimes it could be a not a good fit for a number of things. So I'd be lying if I told you that everybody that participates in an apprenticeship absolutely kills it. Sometimes people just don't perform well, and that's a reason that they're not offered a full-time salary position. Another reason, sometimes, say you yourself were in an apprenticeship and you spent 3 months at X company doing Y things, you just didn't enjoy the company itself. So you didn't want to work there, so you didn't accept the full-time offer. So that's another option of why it wouldn't work out. However, I would say that it's rare that somebody doesn't want to work at that company. So usually it's either a behavioral issue from the person that's participating in the apprenticeship, or they just didn't learn enough and perform well enough to be offered that full-time salary position. Any other questions on that?
In instances like the one you were describing where someone doesn't perform well enough and isn't offered a full-time position, is there the possibility of going through the program again for another internship or something like that, or what are their options there?
Yeah, no, there's absolutely the option to just jump right back into the apprenticeship program. And this has happened a number of times. So say it doesn't work out for whatever reason, say performance is low, say it's just a behavioral issue. That's feedback that we get from the company partner. So like anytime that they don't offer an apprentice a full-time salary position, we get that feedback and we go and we work with that apprentice to get them to where they need to be so that the next apprenticeship is more successful and that hopefully the next time they are offered a full-time salary position. But you're not like, thrown to the curb or thrown by the wayside. We will, still work to get you opportunities and get you landed into an apprenticeship should one that you were in not work out. Okay, and looks like that was my last slide. So any other questions from anybody on anything that I've covered tonight? This was recorded, so you can go back and watch it should you wish. But I will be seeing you all for the remainder of this LC 101. I'll most likely see you all next Monday night, next Thursday as well. And then starting on December 2nd, we'll be jumping into Liftoff. So any questions about anything that I've covered tonight? If you miss it, if you want to ask me something that you think of later, I'm in the Slack channel. Just shoot me a message and I'd be happy to answer that. But yeah, any questions from anybody on Liftoff or anything LC 101 related as well? Can answer that before I throw things back over to Kyle.
For the graduation, John, is there anything that we need to send in to, maybe I should be asking Greg this, to him, to make sure everyone's names are correct, their addresses, because I know I've moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. Is there, yeah, how do we do that? Or should I just ask Greg?
No, yeah, that's a good question. So as far as names go, we'll just pull your name directly from our system. So whatever we have on file, that it'll be spelled correctly. So that, not to worry about that. Secondly, as far as like graduation certificates, maybe that's what you're concerned about with the address. So everybody's going to be sent a PDF of their graduation certificate. So I'll most likely be sharing like a Google folder that has all of your certificates in there. You can just go in and pull yours out, and then you can print it off, or you can attach it to your LinkedIn profile, whatever you wish to do with it. So that's what we're going to be doing as far as certificates go. We do not need your address for anything else, especially not related to graduation. So nothing to worry about there, Jade.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, John, how long will it take for us to find out if we've been selected for the Liftoff program?
So if you complete all of your assignments, Jason, and you opted into that Liftoff program, you'll be accepted into the program, but you won't get like the, hey, welcome to Liftoff automated email until I've added you into the Canvas classroom. And that's going to happen the week of the 22nd, 3rd, and 4th.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It might be sooner. It might be sooner, Jason, but that's like I'll definitely have it done by then.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Somebody else have a question?
Yeah. So I guess just to clarify, like the apprenticeship program is essentially like in the event that you don't get a full-time opportunity, like the apprenticeship program just has the end goal of you getting employment. There's no like time frame on it necessarily. Is that correct?
What do you mean there's no time frame on it? Can you be a little bit more specific?
It's not like a defined like apprenticeship program is 2 months, and if you don't do it or if you don't get employment, then you're out of the apprenticeship program.
Correct. That's correct. So once you're into the apprenticeship program, that's when we're actively trying to match you with company partners. Once you land an apprenticeship, that's where you would be working with that company partner for a 3-month stretch. So that's how long the apprenticeship lasts once you land an apprenticeship. That apprenticeship that pays $20 an hour, I believe, for that 3-month period. You receive full health benefits, all that good stuff, fortunately. But there's no like, once you enter into the apprenticeship program, you only have 2 months to land an apprenticeship, and then that's it. So, we've had people that have been in the apprenticeship program for, over a year trying to land an apprenticeship. So there is no time limit on how long you can be in there, Andrew.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Question on apprenticeships as well. Are we talking in person, at home? Does it kind of vary company to company?
I think it varies company to company right now. That is something that you would know about before you would even interview with that company. So we'd say, hey, this is the company, this is what they do. They currently work in person, currently work remote, or the role would be remote, in person, so on and so forth. Like, you'd get those details before you would have to say like, yes, I want to go and interview with them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Some good.
John.
Yeah.
Are you offered any kind of feedback during the course of the apprenticeship? Like, hey, things are going well. Like we're just gonna ride out this last month or whatever, or is it just kind of like a no feedback until the decision's made?
No, I think that there's feedback throughout. There's also something that we do. There's a mentorship program. So oftentimes what we try and do is, say you were to go and work at, like MasterCard or Boeing, we would have someone that's already went through their apprenticeship program there and been offered a full-time job. We try and pair you with someone so that would be like your one-on-one mentor for you to check in with, to talk about how things are going, any kind of concerns that you may have. It's usually somebody that still works at that company, I believe. So that's something that you can definitely take advantage of. It's not something that you have to do, but it is an option. So you do have the option to get feedback throughout, and I'm certain that whoever it is that you're working with would be giving you feedback as well. But great question. Yeah, great question. Anybody else?
I have a question about how the companies ask for people. Like, do you actively shop people around, or do you just wait and see, like, people go, I need 3 people for like development or something?
So it can vary. You know, each company's different how they, you know, come to us with requests, but usually they've got a certain role that they're trying to fill, and they, you know, tell us like, hey, we're looking for 2 to 3 people to fill this role. So that's when we would come and we would look at, you know, who we have available, whoever's interested, and we would send those people to interview with them. And that's basically the process there. So it's not really shopping around, if that makes sense. Did that clarify it, or did you want something more?
I was wondering, say I have like an introductory knowledge with mainframe stuff, and MasterCard's like, hey, we need somebody over here. Do you take that into account, that I have that mainframe knowledge, knowing that they have mainframe systems?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so anything from your background, like that's something that we include when we, you know, are talking with our company partners, like, hey, Melanie here has, you know, a background in mainframe. Maybe they're not even looking for a mainframe developer, but that experience does help.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I've got a question.
Hey, Kay, yeah, shoot.
If we are already working with the company relations people as a apprentice, like I haven't had an apprenticeship yet, but I've already been looking, can I still go through Liftoff after finishing the LC 101?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
And what would be, after Liftoff is finished in February, when would be the next sign up time?
Sign up for
Liftoff after February.
This is complete guesswork right now. I could look it up, but it would take me just a second. I would imagine that it would be around April.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It might be late March, early April. So for instance, I just wrapped up a Liftoff here in St. Louis.
Because I just don't think my skills are that good, because it feels like every time I get done with an assignment, I forget what I coded.
I felt the exact same way when I went through the program. I'm sure there's a lot of people in that same boat. I think you're doing just fine.
Okay.
I promise you.
Okay, then that makes me feel better.
I hope so, because I was feeling the same way when I went through the program. Trust me, it was not easy.
Right on.
And then if you have any more questions about that, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to talk to you about more about Liftoff and whatnot.
Let's go up on that offer.
Anybody else got a question? I've had some good ones tonight. Curious crowd. I like that. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot them my way. I will be available throughout the remainder of LC 101, so in the next couple weeks. For Liftoff, I will be creating a separate Slack workspace for you all. So there will be a new Slack workspace that you'll receive an invite to once you're added to the Canvas classroom. But that'll all be relatively seamless once that process starts. Kyle, back to you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, John.
Yep.
Yeah, hope everyone's excited about Liftoff. Great questions too. Yeah, that was a lot of good questions. Shouldn't get that much. Fantastic. All right. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. I'm gonna have to hop right into it. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I hope you all are excited for this next stage. It is honestly, since this Liftoff is actually how I came into Launch Code. So I started as a mentor for Liftoff, and it is just an amazing program. I know Bear does a little work with them as well with that. So yes, I hope you all are excited. It's a fantastic thing just to get you ready for corporate, understanding interview and resumes. It's just super cool. Love how it's structured. All right. Gonna get started here. We're already recording. Awesome. Oh, one thing I did forget. Oh, there we go. That's all. Fantastic. All right, let's get this day started. Happy Monday. I realized halfway through, John, and by the way, John, I apologize. I had my mute off, and you might have heard me grumbling under my breath. Yeah, apparently Microsoft just like discontinued my registration for PowerPoint. It's like, oh, you can't use PowerPoint anymore. I'm like, oh, well, luckily John's talking right now because Kyle doesn't even have Word on his computer, so I am all good now. But thank you. Luckily, I have some extra time in class that we can actually do this fun presentation. So, welcome everyone. Happy Monday. I know it's Monday. I know you're probably groggy. We had a beautiful day, but bring it back. Let's talk about Authentication Day. Before that, we always have announcements. Let's go ahead and announce things. Final reminder, remember Studio 19 is due. That is one of those graded studios. Tonight is all about what Studio 19 is going to be about, which is authentication. I believe there's a few other things in there, but essentially just go to Studio 19, see how they work through it. It is not, I'm going to say not self-explanatory, but it does really help you move through the studio. It's not going to have too much of that critical thinking you see in past assignments, but it will require you to do something. So just remember that Studio 19 is required. As always, keep working on assignment 4. Get that assignment number 4 done. Assignment in 3, 2, and 1. Also, reach out to your colleagues, reach out to your TAs, TFs, reach out to me. Get that stuff across the finish line ASAP because we are coming up on that finish line. And then finally, John already mentioned it, no lecture on Thursdays. Not be meeting. I'm sorry. So have a fantastic weekend after this, but no lecture on Thursday. Awesome. Hopefully it's still nice. I think I'm going to go golfing. I don't know. I don't actually know how to golf. Do that. Just pretend. I'm really bad at it. All right. Enough of my mumbling. Let's go ahead and revisit our past. Let's get going. Talk to me, crowd. What data type would be the word pizza? How would I create pizza as a variable?
String pizza.
String fave food equals pizza. Fantastic. Yes, Kyle didn't have dinner, so it is my favorite food right now. I'm gonna get pizza after this. How would I create an integer array of length 6?
When you do like
empty bracket. No,
int.
6.
We'll start with int. Keep going. After int comes what?
Into empty bracket, variable name equals
bracket notation. Fantastic. Fave numbers equals new int with that bracket 6. Remember, 6 means that length. That's how big. Follow-up question: what is the index that it starts at in any array? What number?
0.
Very good. We as developers start counting at 0. It angers everyone, but it makes you look smart. So remember, we start at 0. Fantastic. Tell me this, what are the differences between these two letters? We see a capital S and a lowercase I. What does this denote?
That's a primitive.
Which one's the primitive?
Capital.
Okay, yes.
String.
Capital S is the primitive, or not, excuse me, capital S is the non-primitive, while the lowercase I is the primitive. Lowercase denotes that it is the bare bones, the basic building blocks of our applications. So I, for int, is the primitive. Awesome. Let's keep going forward here. How would I start creating a parent class?
Public class parent.
Fantastic. I heard class parent, and you already gave me this. We need that accessor always. For classes, it's always public. We don't want to hide our classes. We need to utilize them. So when we're building our classes, what goes at the top? What do we start with always? What always goes at the top?
Your class variables.
Variables.
Very good. The class variables. So I'm going to create this name here for our parrot. But what am I missing?
The accessor.
Private.
Very good. The accessor, private. Our class variables, our properties, our fields in our class are always private. So we say private there. How about this? What is the second part that builds the instance of the class? What do we always have second?
The constructor.
Constructor.
Fantastic. The constructor. Talk me through it. How would I build one for this parrot class?
Public parrot parentheses and put
Very
the
good.
class variable in there.
Exactly. If we wanted to.
Sorry.
No, you're absolutely correct. So right here, we just created a default constructor. I didn't take any parameters. I didn't put anything in those curly brackets. But if we wanted to, we could create another constructor, which we'll talk about in a second. First, I want to ask, after we've created the class variables, after we created the constructors, what comes after that?
Getters and setters.
And setters.
Very good. The getters and setters.
Getters
Start
and
me out with the
setters.
getter. How do we start beginning to create the getter?
Public void get string name.
Would it be void? If we're getting a getter, what is that void saying?
No, we're not voiding. It's public.
Get string name, right?
What is the return type though? Is it
Oh,
void
string.
or is it something else? It's a
String.
string. Very good. And I couldn't click anything there because I forgot to actually put the return type in there. So great catch. It is actually going to be a string. So public string get name, because get names get us information to return something. Hence it will have a return type. What comes after the getter?
The setter.
Setter.
Very good, setter. Talk me through building the setter.
Public void.
Wait.
String.
Public void.
Set name, and then in there you go.
Awesome. Yes, it's public void because a setter is just setting in information. We don't need to get anything back. We're not getting anything back. We are taking in a parameter though, what we want to set our class variable to. So we take in a string name and we set our variable there. Fantastic. All right. We already talked about this a little bit. If we wanted to build a second constructor, we put it in there. So you'd say string name, then this.name equals name. That's how we can set things inside of our class through that constructor. But what is this actually called when we have two different constructors there, or maybe two different methods that are named the same thing as well?
Isn't it overloading?
Very good. It's called overloading. We are overloading that constructor, which we can also do that for methods. You can have the same method names. It just has to have a different, different parameter signature. So it has to take in different parameters. Awesome. Let's keep moving forward a little bit more now. How would we create an instance of the parrot class, that class we just created? How many create an instance of it? What would we start with?
Parrot.
Yeah, perfect. Parrot, the actual data type. We need to start with the class type, the data type that we just constructed, parrot. And then the name of the variable, my parrot. So we've created the variable. How do we actually create the instance to put into that variable?
Equals new parrot.
Equals new. Very good. That keyword new creates the instance. And then we choose which constructor we want to call. In this case, I'm calling the default one with no parameters taken in. We could also put our name in there if we wanted to also. But the biggest thing there is that new keyword that will build the instance of this class and save it into the my parrot variable. Now, if we wanted to call a method off this instance, say the getName method, how would I do that? How would I write that?
My parrot dot get name.
Very good. The my parrot dot get name. Remember, we use that the variable name, the dot notation, aka just dot, and then get name, the method I actually want to call. If I wanted to call the set name, let's say dot set name and add a parameter inside those parentheses. Fantastic. Let's keep going a little bit further here. What data structure grows, shrinks, and holds a collection of objects?
Table.
Remember, a table is more of our HTML concept. We're looking for a data structure inside of Java, and I already heard it. Array list is one of our. It is array list. Array list is the array type that can grow and shrink depending on how much we actually need to save in that data type. Unlike arrays, arrays are hard coded to be like we saw 6 or 8, and it cannot grow or shrink. Array lists can. They're more dynamic. When we say data structures, which is a very common term out in development, array lists or lists is a common data type or data structure. Another data structure would be a hash map or a map. These are data structures that we utilize in development to save information in. Data structure is a very common term that you'll use in Liftoff as well as in interviews and in your coding career. So remember data structure. Lists and maps are the two most common data structures you will utilize, as well as arrays. Fantastic. Let's continue on. Which data structure uses key value pairs to save a collection of objects?
Hash map.
Very good. A hash map. That hash map is going to have two parameters within its pointy brackets there, integer and parrot. Tell me, which one of those is the key?
One on the left.
The one on the left. Very good. The left data type, an integer, is our key data type, while the one on the right is going to be the value. Fantastic. All right, now we're moving up here. We're getting past these lectures, almost in double-digit lectures. I'm in with JUnit. I'm creating this nice little thing here. What annotation am I missing?
At test.
Test.
Very good. At test. That's going to provide us, or tell JUnit, this is actually a method for a test to try to test something out. So let's actually test something. If I wanted to check an actual against an expected value, what would I use? What static method do we use in JUnit?
Search equal.
I heard it. I heard it. Didn't have a lot of confidence, but you should have. It is assert equals. Very good. In our left and right hand side. So left hand side is our expected, while our right hand side is our actual. Remember, our hard coded value is always a what is expected. We hard coded that string poly in there. While our actual is when we call to the method to get the value back. That's why we use the method on the right hand side. So fantastic. Take a pause here and just note that when we went through this, even if you might have had some hesitation, you still were able to comprehend what exactly was going on these slides. You saw what variables are, you saw methods, you're able to create classes. So take a pause and just know where you are in class. We have gone through so much together, you have learned a lot. So just pat yourself on the back for that. And let's get into something that's a little bit more, thank you, Graham. Let's get a little bit more into what we have been talking about recently. So let's bring in our dogs and our cats, as you have gone through so many times and have not yelled at me yet for overdoing my pet example. So thank you for that. We have our dog class and our cat class here. We have IDs, names, favorite treats, IDs, name, and favorite perch. These are very closely related. So when we do or have two classes that are very closely related, what should we build to make almost a bridge between them?
Can we make
Parent class.
parent? Yep.
Parent class. I heard a little bit. I might have missed the word there. What is the keyword we would use to create a parent class?
An abstract.
Abstract.
Very good. An abstract class for pet. Because remember, we want to stay more granular. That's why we call it abstract pet. Pet is very abstract, very general. We want to use this to build more specific classes like dogs and cats. So fantastic. Abstract class to build pet. And then we bring in essentially anything that is in common between those two classes. So once we build that, though, how do we actually utilize that abstract class?
Extend.
It is extends. Remember, for extends for abstract classes, well, implements is for what?
Interfaces.
Interfaces. I with I and extends with abstract classes. Very good. All right. So extends is the correct one there. Let's continue a little bit more here. What other tool do we have to create contact between our classes? Oh, and I didn't even realize what I was doing there. What is the other thing besides abstract classes that we use? We just talked about it.
Interfaces?
Very good, it's interfaces. Interfaces are a little bit more cut and dry. There are contracts, right? So in here, we're just really giving the signature of what we want our other classes, our children classes, to implement. In this case, void speak here. So let's bring in that dog class we just had in the past example. We're already extending pets, but how can I actually use my animal interface at the top?
You'd say implements animal.
Very good, implements animal. Remember, we can chain these. We can say extends pet, implements animal. Remember, we can only extend one abstract class, but we can implement as many interfaces as we want. So this is how we would chain that. So implements is the correct there. But once we implement this, because we have it in our contract above to speak, because we're an animal, we would have to immediately implement that method inside of our dog. So this right here are abstract classes and interfaces. So awesome. Let's keep moving forward. Let's get into something that we are very familiar with in the past few weeks. And it is this thing. What is this called? This conversation that's going between three parts.
VC.
I heard it. It is NVC. Fantastic. But my question is, what does it stand for?
Model view controller.
Views and controllers. Fantastic. Our models, our views, and our controllers. Remember, our controller talks to our model, which in turn talks to our controller, which talks to our view, which talks back to our controller, which sends it back over. Blah, 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 blah. Yes, MVC. But let's talk about the views specifically. Views, yes, we're getting into what tag starts an HTML page, excluding the doc type.
No.
Very good. HTML, fantastic. This tells our browser, this is where our page we want people to view things begins. Awesome. Tell me this though, what page contains or tag contains the metadata? Things we don't see.
Model.
What was it?
Head.
It is head. Remember, in HTML, we only, or inside our HTML tags, there are only two possible tags that can actually exist. The first one is head. This contains our metadata, things we don't see, things more that search engines see or other websites in order to know more about your site. So remember, it's in your head. We don't see what's in your head. We see it, what's on the outside somewhere else. And that is the next question. What page contains what the user sees and interacts with?
Body.
The body, very good. So remember, in the HTML tags, only two tags can exist. The head and the body, nothing else. Awesome. So this is our views. This is how we create our HTML. It's how we start building our templates. We're missing a few things to build a template, but this is would be the starting point. So let's go ahead and move on to our controllers. How would we start creating a parent controller? What do we always start with to start building a controller?
Click parent controller.
Control.
I'll give you that, but what's the annotation?
Controller.
Very good. At controller. We start with the at controller, and then you already said it too, the public class parent controller. Fantastic. So tell me this then, what mapping do we use to view a page? We want to see something. Get mapping. Very good. And in this case, we're just going to be calling it the route show. And then what do I do after that? We're not talking about any other mapping right now. We have our annotation there, but we have nothing below it. What's next?
Public string,
good.
whatever we're calling it.
Yep, perfect. Public string view parrot. Then we return parrots-list. When I do this, technically, what page or document am I looking for? What would it be called?
A template with that name.
.html.
.html, very good. So yeah, you're absolutely right with the extension .html. So parrotslist.html. Awesome. Let's keep moving forward. Which mappings is used when a form is submitted?
Post
mapping.
Very good. And post mapping. When an event occurs on our site, it has to send back information in that post. So in this case, we typically create something. So we're going to say post mapping, create there. And then after that, excuse me, we of course put our method underneath of that. So public string create new parrot, and we include our information all there. Fantastic. So we have successfully created a controller there. But the controller takes in what? Tell me that. What does it actually take in? It is a master of two things. What does it take in?
Requests.
It takes in requests. Yes, we always send over requests to our controller. But who actually sends these requests?
The
user.
The user, very good. But we call the user something very specific. The UI, user interface, the client side, the front end. Those are our users. Because I'll tell you this, a user is not always a person. Sometimes other computers are talking to other computers, and those are technically the clients. So that's why we refer to our users as clients, or the client side, or the user interface, or the front end. Now, once the controller processes that request, it sends back what?
A response.
Sends back a response. Fantastic.
Response?
So it is response. Very good. And my question now is, okay, we're talking between our front end and our controller, but once our controller shuts down, we forget everything. So what do we have additionally in this flow that keeps our data around?
Database.
Very good. A database. Our database persists, saves our information. So even if our controller shuts down, our database still has that we can talk back and forth with. Fantastic. So when it comes to that, we need to start telling our database what to actually save inside of it. So that's when we started learning about this persistence layer. And we learned about another specific thing. We learned about entities. So how would I start creating a credit card entity?
At entity.
At entity, fantastic. That annotation at entity. And then what comes after that? Where is this annotation living on top of?
Is it above the credit card class?
Very good, the credit card class. So we would say public class credit card. This is how we start building our entities. You look at any of your models that are entities, this is exactly how it looks with, of course, a different class name. Then we bring in class properties. We have an ID, a credit card number, and an expiration date. But I'm missing some things here. What do we always need to do once we bring in these properties? What do I need to add?
Empty constructor.
An empty constructor, but let's keep it, I like where you're at, but let's stay at the very top. I'm missing some annotations to tell my table some very important things. Very good. ID, to make sure they know that this property is an actual unique number to relate the rows with. What comes after that? What's the other thing?
Generated
value. Very good. We need to keep those IDs unique, so we use at generated value. Fantastic. And I already heard it too, we're going to use that default constructor. So we use that default constructor because Hibernate needs that in order to build our objects from the database. And then finally, we have our appropriate getters and setters at the very bottom. Always, always, always class variables, constructors, and then appropriate getters and setters. And also all our other methods.
Hey Kyle, real quick, is the default constructor before the regular one? Like the empty one always comes before the other one? Is that true?
That's a great question. So typically it's formatted where you go by length of parameters. So one that has 0 parameters at the top, well, one that might have 5 parameters would be at the bottom. So you go by number of parameters. So typically, to answer your question, yes, the one with no parameters would typically be at the very top.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, great question.
Another
there.
question, Kyle. Is there a quick?
Yeah.
Can you just go to the building the controller slide real quick?
The one right back.
Yep.
Like this one.
Yep.
Okay.
That's all I needed. Thank you.
You're welcome. Don't forget these slides are also on the drive. If you need that, just let me know.
Thank
All
you.
right. Anytime. I love people just taking pictures of my slides. It makes me feel great. All right. So we just established that connection between our credit card and our database. Fantastic. So the next question is, what would be the credit card entity and a person? How would they be related? We have a credit card entity and we just created a person entity. How would it be related? What's the relationship between them?
One-to-one.
I heard a one-to-one. I heard another one. What was the other one?
Many to one.
One to many.
I heard a many-to-one. Any else? Remember, we're in the perspective of who here?
The credit card, right?
We would start at the perspective, technically we're looking at the, we'd technically be at the perspective of the, well, it's the perspective of the person. So, because they're on the left-hand side. So let's talk
one to many.
One to many.
Right, exactly, because a person can have many credit cards, but a credit card can only have one owner. From the perspective of the person, we have to read from right to left. So it's one to many. One to many. Very good. All right, talking about this now, how about a person to a social security number? What would be the relationship here? Very good. One person can only have one social security number. A social security can only have one person. So this should be a one-to-one relationship, always.
Unless I take it.
Unless they take it, yes. And then that is hopefully where our databases catch that, right? Touche. All right, let's talk about
Another thing could be if someone has to get theirs changed because their twin sister has a history of like opening accounts with their parents' stuff.
Possibly. That'd be definitely an example. But let's
Because
hope
a twin
none of those
sister,
cases happen.
Because twins tend to have like back-to-back SSNs.
Possibly. Those situations are out there.
I know
All
that
right.
because Katie and I have consecutive ones.
Gotcha. Okay. Very cool. Did not know that. All right. Let's talk about this cute little teddy bear. We are at our add toy. So what we're trying to do here, and by the way, I didn't even make this announcement in the very beginning. I apologize. I know we stopped lecture prematurely after a example couldn't be completed. I'm working on getting that out there. I'm having some problems with the DTO on our design for our application. So trying to get that all cleared away with a good recording. But if you have any questions specifically about the example, feel free to reach out to me. But that's what we're about to get into. So we had this cute little teddy bear last time that we were talking about this example. And what we had to do was send over that, hey, I want this toy. I want it attached to this dog. So we send over our post request. And we bring in that dog and that teddy bear, who we want to actually attach to when we're talking on our application. So if I wanted to use two models and transfer information between my view and my controller, what would I use?
Repository.
That's how we would talk to our database from our controller as a repository. That's how we communicate with our persistence layer via our controller. This was a concept that we kind of just learned about last week, where we want to transfer two models at one time from our view to our controller. Anybody remember what that was called?
Use a data transfer object?
It is a data transfer object, a DTO. Yes. That was the one thing that always trips me up, and it definitely did. And I'm still trying to get a good example for that in there. But I do have code out there that does show a successful DTO. If anybody wants it, just let me know. So that was a DTO. That's when we want to transfer those two objects to that controller from our view all in one package. Awesome. So we are having a great time, right? A lot of questions there. Just again, remember that you know so much. So you have been doing fantastic. Thank you for sticking with me through that test there. But just wanted to review everything that we have done up until now. So let's keep having so much fun here. Tell me this. Elvis won how many Grammys?
0.
0.
0.
At least didn't exist.
Jeez. Well, we have some Elvis haters out here. He won 3 Grammys, friends. Come on. I actually didn't know that. I'll look that up. But he won 3 Grammys. All right. How about this? The first soda in space, or pop, depending on your region, was what?
A Coke.
What was it?
Cool.
It was Coca-Cola. Of course it was, right? Coca-Cola is first to everywhere. All right. How about this one? The speed of the computer mouse is measured in what?
Squeaks.
You know what? You're very close.
DPI.
RPM.
It is actually in Mickey's. It is in Mickey's. Yes. That is what the speed of the mouse is technically measured in. Fantastic. All right. Everybody ready for this? Back to reality, serious space. All right. Let's bring in what we already know here. We have our UI, our client side, our front end. And we always have been working with our application that we want to get a website, so we send over a GET request over to our controller. Nothing crazy, right? I'm actually going to get, sorry, one second. Sorry to derail here. There you are. Where's that box? All right. Well, actually, feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. So what we have here is that we already have our front end. It's talking to the controller. It's getting a GET request. And what that does is that controller creates that view with all of our dogs on it. We've seen this. The controller creates that dogs, and then it sends back that view to our client side for us to view it. This is nothing new. This is great. We've been doing this up until this end. But we've been kind of living in our own beginning of development bubble, if you will. This is fantastic on our local machines, but let's talk about a real world situation. Kyle, myself, moi, wants 3 dogs, of course. And I want 3 dogs in my database. I can put them there, and I have my ownership of Kyle. Fantastic. My dogs are out there. But in the real world, if I'm outside of my safety bubble, there are other people out there that want my dogs. That's a normal thing. Somebody wants to try to come steal Stark. They can maybe have Toby. That's fine. But I want to still keep my dogs safe. This is a common dilemma in our controllers or someone who's trying to figure out whose dogs are what. So our controller talks basically to the users to find out who is who and whose dogs are whose. So what they do is that they are trying to find out who actually Kyle is between these two random individuals or random two users. So they ask me questions and ask the other individual questions as well, such as, what is Kyle's favorite food? And then someone says, oh, emos. And then the other person, the real Kyle, says cheesecake. Obviously, I would never eat emos unless I was force-fed. So what this happens is that we essentially were able to tell who the imposter was and who Kyle was by asking these kinds of questions. So when we do this kind of simple task, no matter if it's just with your friends or on the computer, you just did authentication. You asked specific questions to actually figure out who is who when you can't actually see the individual. Such as if you're on the phone and you don't really think you're talking to your friend, you ask like, all right, I really don't believe this. Tell me, what was the last thing I told you, or something like that. Those kinds of authentication questions, those happen in real life as well as in the computer. So we are trying to prove who we are and who we say we are without them being able to actually verify us right away. And how we can do that on a computer's sake is one, the very obvious one is called a password. You already know what passwords is, so we all know what passwords are. We also have trusted sources. These trusted sources could be other applications that already know you through past validation and say, hey, he is who he is. You might see that on some websites where you automatically get logged in because you've been logged in before, or Google verifies you through the Google login on another site so you can get in there a little bit faster. I believe Zoom has that. Those are trusted sources. Other authenticators that say, you're good to go, you're cool. And then finally, the third that's becoming more and more popular is physical. You know this one through Face ID. You know it through thumb scanners. You can also do voice recognition now too on some devices. This is physical. These are all ways that our technology asks us questions to prove who we are because they can't actually see us. This is how we verify who we are. And this is how we defend our information. It's how we defend our dogs. So let's talk about this in an actual sense. So we have our UI here. And you have seen this. I know authentication is very, very self-explanatory. We're going to get very deep into it, but we're going to start a very simple case right now. We have our usernames and passwords. We type in our username, we type in our password. Fantastic. What we do in a normal sense every day, this is probably very prominent to everyone out here, is that now it needs to get authenticated. We have our username and password. If I type in the wrong password or type in the wrong username and password or whatever, I get back a big red X saying nope, and we go right back to the login. This is the typical flow. If you get incorrect, you go right back to that login. But if you say the right stuff, you answer the questions correctly, you provide the correct password, you get access to your information. This right here, again, is a simple flow for authentication at a very high level. So, if there's any questions, feel free to also type them in the lecture chat. But let's start diving a little bit deeper into this. All right, so when we have our authentication or we have our username and password and they're sent over, let's talk about what actually happens behind the scenes with authentication. We always, as you know, every time we click accept enter or whatever, we type in information, we send over a request to our controller with this information. You just provided valuable information, the username and the password. So what it does is that it sends it over to the controller. The controller is going to now check it against a persistence layer, AKA our user table. It checks against that user table and then sends back a response. Those responses can be one of the two. Either you are who you say you are, or nah, imposter trying to steal dogs and eat emos. So we don't want this. So what we check out is actually what comes back, whether it was a good request or a bad one. So in this case, if it is a bad authentication, we keep the user at the login screen. Simple and dry. If they can't prove who they are, don't let them in. But if they do provide the correct password for that username, then something happens. In the browser, if you provide that correct information, something called a session is started. You just told your controller, your server, you are who you say you are. So they want to remember that. So this session thing begins. So let's talk a little bit more about the session. What exactly is a session? In order to do that, we need to also take basically the blindfold off onto what actually happens in reality when we're out on the web. Let's talk about just a simple transaction between yourself and the controller. In this case, the controller we're going to be talking about is maybe not everyone's favorite, but it's definitely a very popular one. If you're going to Amazon.com, that's great. But the reality is you're not the only one on Amazon.com right now. Amazon.com doesn't have just one controller. They have a lot of different people coming at Amazon at all times. Thousands upon thousands of people are trying to talk to Amazon. So when that's the case, we can't just have one controller out there praying that can handle a crowd of people who just want to buy the brand new blanket for Christmas or something like that from Amazon. We need to have multiple things out there to service all of these incoming clients. Hence, startings of sessions. When a user comes to a site, they have a dedicated controller or session to them at that site. This session holds specific information about what they're doing on that site. AKA, the session holds the information of the unique session ID. So every user that touches that controller holds a unique session ID inside of it. Not only that, it also holds a little bit of user information, who they are while they're on that controller. This is a necessity in order for the session to maintain itself. One more thing about a session is that once your browser closes, technically that session ends. It no longer exists, and that connection is terminated. So now that we know a little bit more about sessions, let's go ahead and bring it back to what we were talking about before with our logins. In this one, we have our username and password as always. We send over a request, and once we send over that request with successful information to the controller, it begins that session for us and basically throws that session in front of us and says, okay, go have fun with your session, do whatever you want with this controller. It's dedicated to you, so your connection is as fast as possible. When that session is created, it creates that key. So once we create that key, we still need to tell our computer all about that. We just don't keep it on our server side. Everyone needs to know about it. So in our response, we actually, in a successful, we send back that session ID, that session key, back to our client side so our browser can know about it. Now, our browser needs to know about it and remember it as well. How exactly does our browser remember this? Because we have many sessions going on. If you're like me, I have 80 tabs open at once. I have 80 different sessions going. So what we do is we save it in a thing called a cookie. A cookie is a very minimal, very small piece of information on your browser that maintains information such as your unique session ID, as well as your own user information as well. Now, when I say user information, does that mean that it's essentially these cookies are technically tracking you? No, what it's doing is holding who you are and your ID or your session ID in one, so it can uniquely identify you when you reconnect to the session. I know there's a lot of things out there about cookies and how they're supposed to track you. Technically, cookies do not track you. The server on the other end is what actually holds the information about what the user was actually doing, not your browser itself. So this essentially is how the reality of the web is working out there. And you've already become accustomed to it. We're just lifting off the blindfold to actually what's going on. So when we have our cookies out there for the UI client side, and we already have established our session, and we're trying to do another request, on our UI side, we send over the request. But this time, when we're going back over to Amazon or going back over to even your financial information, every time you send over a request there, you don't have to type in your username and password every single time. So what we do instead is send over the session ID that you already authenticated yourself with, and we tell the session, hey, or the server side with that session, hey, here's my key. And it replies, oh, okay, cool, you're back. How you doing? And you're like, I'm doing great. Can I get some more Amazon stuff? Whatever. And in that conversation, it sends back the response to whatever you asked for. In our example, we were talking about our dogs. So I say, hey, here's my key. And it's like, great, here's your dogs. I don't need your password and your username anymore because you gave me that key and your user information or whatever's stored in that cookie. So this right here is the reality of the web and how authentication works on a just an example kind of scale with sessions and cookies and keys and things like that. So I'll leave it here open just really, really quickly for any questions. Anything at all?
On the website says, do you want us to save this password for the future or whatever? Is that a cookie?
So that will technically be in your keychains, and that would be the browser. So the browser actually maintains your passwords for you on your side. So if you save your password, you're saving that within the browser scope. So if you're in Chrome, it has a whole thing dedicated to all your online passwords inside of it. I believe at that point too, it syncs up to its cloud, so it's shared between your browsers, but that gets a little bit more complicated. The answer to your question is it's all on your computer side if they save that password.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? All right. Well, cool. I hope that was fun. I hope that was fun. So let's keep having more fun. I told you we're having fun today. More fun here. Tell me who's more popular between 2017 and 2018 with pets. Who's more popular, birds or reptiles?
Birds.
Reptiles.
It is birds. Very good. All right. Yes, birds are popular. How about this? Horses or saltwater fish?
Horses.
Saltwater fish.
Saltwater fish. Times are hard.
Saltwater fish. Times are hard. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Dogs.
Dogs, because people don't suck.
Sorry to blow your. I'm sorry. It is cats. It is cats. Yes. All right. Final one. Freshwater fish or cats?
Cats.
Who's gonna win?
Fish.
You think the cats would eat all the freshwater fish, so those numbers would go down, but the freshwater fish did win between 2017 and 2018. So
Counting like each individual fish versus each individual cat here.
Yep.
That's that fish from American Dad.
There you go. It is. So that's what I think the numbers, like in my head, I was like, oh, there's like, I don't know that many people with fish, but when you have fish, you have fish. So I think that's why the numbers go up there. Awesome. All right. Fantastic. Let's go ahead now, and we're going to go from that authentication we just learned about, and we're going to see a little bit more in depth and actually see the protection around it. So with our controller, you already saw that we have our username and password coming in there. And like we said, this controller will provide authentication. This is where all of that protection and double checking if you are who you say you are goes on inside this controller. And as always, we talk with that user table about, okay, is this actually a user and what is their password? So let's go ahead and talk about that. If you are like me, I would be very concerned with what I just said, saying that there's a database out there somewhere with all of my passwords in it. I would be a little skeptical about that. So we'll see a user table here. And what I'm going to say is that we have our ID, the Godfather, and then my password was pizza. Awesome. But like I said, holding your password inside of a table somewhere in Ohio where it's very common, or Virginia or something like that, concerns the living sheeber-geebers out of me, because there are a lot of hackers out there that are just looking for that password. So what I'm about to tell you here is that there is no way, or you should never, save your passwords in its full form ever in databases. Never save passwords or anything protected in its actual human readable form ever in databases. Never, never, never. You do not want to save pizza as pizza, because someone will steal your pizza. So if that is the case, we need an actual way that we can protect our passwords. Hence enters encryption. This is a way, or encryption is a way that we can make something human readable into something that is illegible or unreadable. So encryption is how we can actually protect against someone just seeing the word pizza, trying it out, and gaining access to our account. And make it very, very easy.
You guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Sorry, headphones just died. So encryption is how we make something readable to non-readable. So how do we exactly do that, the encryption? And therefore, we bring in something that's called hashing. This is a way that we can encrypt something. Hashing is a method or a formula in which we utilize to take a string or some kind of word or something and basically mix it up so you can't tell what it was beforehand. Picture a puzzle that was just perfectly put together. Great, it looks awesome. Pretend that's your password. Hashing would be going in there and just mixing it all up and making it completely illegible so you don't even know what that picture was. That's what hashing is. So let's take a look at that at a string form. We'll bring in pizza here, and we'll put this through a hashing method. You've seen my hash code or something like that is, again, one of those methods just mixes it all up into something that you have no idea what the original was. So pizza is now this crazy, weird looking string over here on the right-hand side. But one thing about this is that, say we put in a different string, we get a different hash code. And if we have pizza, we get the same one as before. So if we put in the same word, we get the same hash code back. If we put in a different word, we get a different hash code. So this is what this means by it has to jumble it up in a consistent way. It has to be consistent when we jumble it all up. So it has to be very repeatable. We have to trust that this algorithm is going to give us back that same hash code if it's the same word. So that is the basics of hashing there. So when it comes to encryption, we know that we can do hashing in order to basically mix it all up. Well, let's talk about the two types of encryption real quick. We have the two-way encryption. So we have pizza here. We send it through a hashing algorithm. It's that tool that we use again to mix everything up. But in this case, we're going to send a key with it. Basically, something that we can protect it with. So this key is used inside the hash map, or inside the hashing, and it produces that same hash code. Fantastic. But two-way encryption is a little unique, where we can take that gobbledygook, provide that key again with that hashing algorithm, and get our word back, pizza. Awesome. This is really cool, and it's used in two-way, or when we're actually transferring like documents across the web, they'll use two-way encryption to add an extra layer of authentication on top of it. So this is awesome for communication back and forth. But it is not good when we try to actually save our passwords. So this is not something we're going to want to use to protect our passwords within our user table. So let's talk about one more type of encryption. This one is called one-way encryption. One-way encryption is half of what we just talked about. It's where we say pizza, we put it through the hashing algorithm with no key necessary, and we get back that gobbledygook, that hash code right there. So this right here, whenever we put this back to the hashing algorithm, does not give us back pizza. Actually, it will just give us something back even more complicated. This, therefore, cannot be recovered once it is encrypted, which is okay. I know our passwords can't be recovered after they've been hashed. We want that, and we'll see why here in a moment. But just know that one-way encryption turns into a hash map, or excuse me, not hash map, turns into a hash code, or just some kind of hash string, and we cannot get pizza back out of it once we do that. So let's talk about why this is awesome for our user tables. So as we said, we don't ever want to store our passwords directly inside of our user tables. We need to remove that and replace it with something instead. So instead of putting pizza directly in our tables where we have no idea where our data is actually being stored, instead of saving that password directly, we can save the password hash instead. This is how we protect our stuff. Because if someone breaks in and sees that hash, it's going to be very hard for them to get pizza out of what they just saw to break into my account. So this is great. We're storing those hashes there. So when a user creates an app, or when a user creates a, when the user creates their account, we hash their password, we save that into our tables. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about how secure this actually is. So we can hash things, that's really cool, but let's talk about a scenario. We'll bring in 3 people that have really good ideas for passwords, so including myself. They all have their passwords as pizza. We all hash that, and as we said, it's repeatable. So every one of our users gets back the same exact hash code. We get back those exact same hash codes and we save them in our user table. Fantastic, that's all fine. We can't actually see the passwords in there. I mean, technically, if they broke in, they wouldn't know exactly how to get into there because our password's all hashed. But there have been scenarios in the past that this becomes a little tricky because computers have increased their processing power. So let's talk about a little bit of a hacker here. Pizza is very common of a word. And we're actually talking about a scenario where my password is pizza. So if a hacker was smart, which there are some out there, unfortunately, they would try all common words with our hashing algorithm, such as ice cream. They maybe do hot wings. And then they try pizza. They just found our hash code. So if they ever broke into the database, which is completely a possible thing, as you know from the news, people can break into databases pretty well. If they found out how to, or if you use a password that's very common, they can use this hashing algorithm to find out exactly what your password is in human readable form, because they just checked the hash codes to see if they're equal and checked what they used to get that, AKA they just got your password and they can break into your account. This is not good because again, whoever had the password pizza, such as all of our users here, this hacker now has access to a bunch of accounts and can do all of this damage. So though hashing does start to protect us a little bit against maybe some kitty scripters or something like that, or script kitties and some other things like that, it's not going to be protected against more advanced hackers or different attacks. So we need to add a little bit extra protection to our passwords to help us out. So what do we do to actually protect against this? Let's bring in our passwords here. We have pizza. But now we're going to add something to it. We're going to add some just random number or something to the end of this. So we have pizza and this random number, which, hold on, I'll tell you what this is. We have this random number we just added to pizza in order to increase its size, but also make these all unique between our users. Because as you can see, all these numbers are a little different. These numbers are what we call salt. We are salting our hash code, or we are salting our original password. So again, all three users have pizza, and we are now salting it with a random generated number that are all different per user. Now what's gonna happen when we hash all of these together? Well, not only are we going to get a more advanced or more larger hash code that's harder to break into, but they're all unique between users. So even on the off chance that one user somehow gets hacked, at least only one instead of up to thousands of hackers that have, or thousands of users that have the same password. So what this salt does is that it adds that extra protection and uniqueness to passwords that even are the same. This is how we can protect against this. So we have this random generated number, but exactly how does that play into our table, into our users and everything like that? Well, going back to the user table, what we would see here is that we have our ID, our username, and our password hash, all fine and dandy, but we also need to now include our salting, the number that we use to protect against that password. So we include that salting or that salt number inside of our user table. So even if the user, or even if the hacker was able to get a hold of our table, it would take a long, let's just say a long time to actually go through and hack enough accounts for it to be a viable solution. So this salting, though it's not always 100% secure, it protects our users by more uniqueness and offers a higher chance, or a lower chance of multiple users being actually hacked at the same time. So salt is what is used to protect against that scenario. All right, that was a lot of talking on my part, and we are 15 minutes over, and technically we are finished. Why I didn't do any coding today is because I would highly recommend for you all to watch Lecture 18 with Chris to go through that coding scenario. All the code is given to you in those examples, and honestly, if I showed you my code, it would be exactly copied off there because there's a lot to actually bring into your application. You know all about it. It has get mappings, it has post mappings, and we just talked about the authentication behind it and exactly how it's going to talk to that user table there. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or if you have any right now, I'm happy to answer them. And then thanks to TA Alex for sending over that dictionary attack and the rainbow table. Those are very fun if you ever want to just find out how people exactly hack databases or the strategies they use to hack databases and things like that. Those are two very, very good ones. But yeah, that is it, everyone. I apologize for keeping a little bit over time, but authentication is a big one, and I really wanted to talk all the way through it. So I'll go and answer any questions you guys have right now. Anybody has any last minute questions?
Kyle?
Yeah, what's going on?
I've increasingly seen suggestions from people who have been working in the development field for a while, saying that if they could just eliminate passwords from existence and force people to use other kinds of, physical or two-factor authentication, they would do it. But of course, that boat has sailed. Do you, not being, being pretty new to this, I don't know what other people are saying. Is that a minority view to really try to find something, 2.0 or 3.0 beyond just typing a string password? Or is passwords just here to stay?
So, yeah, I mean, that's all a gray zone. So you'd have to convince 7 billion people to switch from text passwords, including my own mother, to a two-factor physical sense. So what I would say is that it's always possible, but unfortunately, in the world we live in, people are hesitant to change sometimes, especially when it comes to their accounts. So what I'm going to say is that as a tech person, I'm saying, yeah, let's do it. But there's also that human element to it where I think, yes, textual passwords will always be there. However, we do see two-auth authentication becoming more and more commonplace and sometimes even necessary or required, especially in financial platforms. So I think that string passwords will stay. But I think that they will start using cell phones, cellular devices, more physical, to authenticate as well. So I think two-factor is going to definitely take over, as it already has in a lot of places. As in, you all know two-factor by if a text gets sent to your phone and you have to type in that 6-digit code into your computer to authenticate yourself, that'd be two-factor authentication. So that's becoming much more and more prevalent because of all these hacks. So I would see that as becoming the more secure world. In the end, I think that Face ID, thumbprint, things like that, or something that is other than just social engineering, aka guessing someone's password. So I think we're getting there, but like we know, some people are more resistant to change, including myself. So that's the struggle more about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. All right. Any other questions?
Did you say the video is already out for this?
Video for
the studio, sorry.
So there will be no studio video out for 19 because this is a graded studio. So I will not be able to produce a video. However, I did put up an authentication video going through authentication in kind of just a different style. So if you want to see that, that will hopefully help you out a little bit. But Studio 19, and if you do the exercise too, it should be smooth sailing. But if not, feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions?
Question.
Oh, heard something.
How long after this course will we have access to what we learned, like the book? And
learning stays with you forever. Just don't forget anything.
Oh, easy.
Yeah, exactly. The book will always be accessible. You always have access to it.
Awesome.
So just star those links. When it comes to the YouTube videos, I usually keep them up until that unit starts with my next cohorts. So they will go from public to unlisted. So if you want to save any particular videos, feel free to star them as well. I'll just make them unlisted. However, sometimes they do go down if I start scheduling them. So they might be, that's just a small little detail, but yeah, if you need anything in my videos, I'd say star the ones specifically that you want, or keep them in your excuse me, I already forgot the term there, but your favorites, excuse me. Yeah, start them in your favorites, and that will stick around too. If you don't have access to any of them, just let me know. The Slack will be up usually fairly long afterwards, so feel free to reach out to me. I'll also be sharing my contact information at the end of the course. So learning stays with you forever, including the YouTube videos in the book. All right, great question there too. Any final questions? All right. Remember, no class on Thursday, y'all.
Oh, I've got a fun question. So on the server side for authentication, where does that information live? If you have a load balancing situation, where does that token information live?
On the server side, if you're having load balancers, are we talking about a cloud?
Oh yeah, you spun up another AWS. I'm just trying to throw you off.
No, I know you are. I mean, I'm actually legitimately thinking like, what are you using for your load balancer? Are you using EC2s? You got like, I mean, if you let me think. Like, oh God, I'm trying to think of where my sessions are even stored. Talk about later. I'm literally like, where did I spin up my? I haven't been on the AWS side in forever. Like I've been through like API gateway.
I ask more to throw these questions to these people to keep their brains hungry and asking more and more questions. There's always stuff out there that complicates the stuff and makes it more complicated. Learn what's in front of you.
You actually know where it's at? Like if we did a load balancer between like a bunch of nodes, I mean technically where's the server session stored? It would be incognito, wouldn't it? I mean, depending on what you're using for your user authentication.
I don't know.
Okay.
It was a question thrown at me in an interview, but
yeah, I mean,
it was one I didn't have a good answer for.
I don't know where the session would be. Oh no, because the load balancer, technically the instance is copied between the multiple nodes, right? Because if one node goes down, the other ones have to take it. So it should be utilized
on all of them.
All of them, yeah. Whoever's using the session, you have to keep that going because if one goes down, you have to go to your backups. So all of them shouldn't have it. I mean, unless there's like a ternary or middleman service that's keeping it there. I don't know. Now you got me all thinking like, where is that stuff stored? That's a good question. Somewhere in the cloud. Just answer in the cloud. Always works.
That's what you get for asking, are there any more questions? There's always more questions.
Yeah, give it to me. Yeah, I like these fun questions. It gets my brain going. Oh, all right, everyone. Have a fantastic week. Remember, no class on Thursday. Get that assignment number 4 in. And yeah, I'll see you all back here on Monday. Have a fantastic weekend, and night.